I'm Nikki Williams. I'm a volunteer and a big fan of the Bushwick Film Festival. I'm a producer at Nickelodeon on the digital platforms, and I'm here to moderate an amazing, super short, bite-sized panel with Jose Rodriguez and Michele Hamada from the Tribeca Film Institute. And just to go ahead and dive into it, since we've got such a short amount of time, tell me about yourselves. Where do you come from? How did you get started? And what landed you there at Tribeca?
So hi, I'm Jose Rodriguez. I'm the Director of Documentary Programs at Tribeca Film Institute. For those of you who don't know, Tribeca Film Institute is the nonprofit organization that is affiliated to the Tribeca Film Festival. So TFI was created right after 9/11, and then as a result, the festival was created to address the Tribeca community and bring back artists and storytellers to a community and a neighborhood that was obviously ravaged by the terrorist attacks. And so TFI's mission has always been to foster underserved storytellers and filmmakers, not just in New York City, not just in the US, but all over the world. I've been there, I think, close to 10 years, almost 10 years, so I'm like the veteran there. I've seen it grow and evolve as an organization. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I always knew I wanted to be involved in the film industry, and almost 10 years ago, this fell in my lap, and so it's been a really formative part of my experience, developing these filmmaker programs that we have, which we'll tell you about in a little bit. But yeah, it's been really instrumental for us to kind of be in spaces like this, not just travel around the world and look for filmmakers and read applications, but come to our backyard and be involved with the Bushwick Film Festival.
Hi, I'm Michele Hamada. I'm the manager of documentary and scripted programs at TFI. Similarly to Jose, I studied film and I've always wanted to work in the film industry. I worked for a film distribution platform for the first few years after college, and I was trying to think about my next move and thinking about what I wanted to do in my career, and I realized I wanted to do something in artist support. And then when I saw this job come up, it seemed like pretty perfect to work at a place that really focuses on supporting underrepresented filmmakers with funding and with networking, workshops. So that's how I ended up at TFI.
Oh, wow. So as a fellow filmmaker, and I'm sure there are many in the audience, one big question I know a lot of us have is, how do you choose? How do you choose who to support, what stories to tell, and which communities to impact? Because I think that's really broad.
Yeah, it's a good question. So TFI is, if you go to our website, and it's very confusing, so we take opportunities like this to kind of demystify and clarify our programs. You'll notice that we have a broad swath of documentary funds, workshops, and scripted funds and initiatives and labs. So here we can clarify a little bit of how we support certain projects. The first program that we want to kind of put on your radar, if you don't know it, is called Tribeca All Access, TAA for short. It's kind of our flagship program. When TFI was created, this was the first program that was created. And most importantly, it's open for submissions now through November 5th. So mark your calendars. TAA supports underserved filmmakers, women of color, people of color, filmmakers, directors, writers, producers, and we support inclusivity within each filmmaking team. So what we do is we support feature-length scripted projects and documentary projects, and we give 10K, grants of $10,000 at any stage from development through post-production. The catch is that the team, the filmmaker has to, and whoever's getting the grant has to be working on their first or second feature. So that's how we classify the program as kind of an emerging filmmaker program. So to apply, we're looking for just any type of story that is, distinctive, powerful story that maybe hasn't been told, or a unique, distinctive vision on a topic that we might be familiar with. So in terms of subject matter, we're not looking for anything specific. it could be a sports documentary, it can be a very artful family first-person documentary, social issue-driven, character-driven, you name it, as long as, again, the filmmaking team is inclusive and it's comprised of underserved storytellers, and it's the first, second feature. So what we need is written application, obviously, on our website, a treatment that is kind of serves more as a creative document. We want to hear from the filmmaker's perspective on how they're telling the story. And then a short sample, footage sample, around 7 minutes is kind of like the sweet spot for us. And obviously I'm speaking in relation to feature documentaries that might apply, but Michele oversees both scripted and doc. So, but we get about 200, 250 submissions, and if there's a scripted side to TAA and a documentary side, so usually it's kind of like 60-40, depending on the year of applications, the number of applications. And out of those 250, we pick about 14, 15. So it's always going to be competitive, but it's somewhat of our least competitive fund.
And one special thing about Tribeca All Access too is it comes with an invitation to our network. So during the Tribeca Film Festival each year, we hold a big market where we invite industry. Usually ends up being about 250 industry that come to meet with our filmmakers. And it's filmmakers throughout all of our support throughout the year. Sometimes we invite alumni, we meet filmmakers at festivals, markets all around the world. But TAA is the only program that has like a guaranteed slot at TFI Network.
Wow.
And piggybacking off of your question, the way we see TAA is this is our way to introduce these stories. When we pick a project for funding, it's can this story find a US audience and a viability in the marketplace? And number two, with this invitation of the project to our film market, is this filmmaking team and this project ready to be connected, ready to be put in touch with distributors, sales agents, other funders? So it's our way of like catapulting a project to like somewhat of another level.
That's incredible. It makes me want to almost take a step back and find out, like, what is a good story to you? Like, what are the guts, or what is it about a film, whether it be scripted or documentary or short or animated? What makes it good? Like, how do you personally define that?
Yeah, well, one thing that Jose mentioned specifically about TAA is that Tribeca is really filmmaker focused. So on top of a story, we're really looking at who the filmmaker is and what their specific perspective is into the story. So I think those two things are really inextricably linked. We have one part of our application called a filmmaker statement, and I think all of us, like, that's the first thing we all read because it's the most interesting and really kind of the heart of the story, and understanding what the passion is from the filmmaker, what's their lens, what's their unique take on this particular story. Standardly, like, we're looking for something that hasn't been told before. We're looking for something from a unique perspective. A lot of our funds also come with a pitch aspect. Definitely with the market, but also we have some that have public pitches. So something that can be concise and intriguing, in a limited period of time as well.
Yeah, and I would say also this kind of like delicate balance. What we look for is this delicate balance of like the specificity of a story that evokes universal themes. So sometimes we find a story about a small town in Peru, and then it has an amazing character, or is just very visually potent, and that can elevate, or it's funny, and that elevates the story, and it can reach an audience in Los Angeles or whatever in the US. Sometimes those stories end up being purposefully small or niche, and while it might be like a good story, we have to see it from a deeper level as well. And okay, it's a good story. I personally want to see this and be immersed in the story, but in relation to what we do, we have to put another hat on and say, can this film connect with a wider audience? And I wouldn't say that doesn't mean we're looking for these films that we support to be in movie theaters. Obviously, that's not the reality of the landscape, but it's more, can this film have a healthy festival route? Can this film maybe get a broadcast deal. So there's different views and perceptions of success that we kind of take into account.
And so has there ever been a time where that sort of mandate and call to action sort of went against maybe what your personal choices would have been, like outside of that arena, meaning like maybe there was a story that you absolutely loved, but it didn't fulfill all of those tick marks? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, like the kind of fun thing about our work is that there's, it's maybe on the filmmaker side they feel like pressure to deliver, but on our end, we don't take any rights. It's a grant, whether it's a 10K grant from All Access or any of our other funds. We just want like an acknowledgement of the credits and consistent flow of communication between us. But I mean, that does happen. The film doesn't end up reaching the audience that we thought or the impact, but it's an investment. We put bets. We bet on the film to find an audience, and we just some strike out, but we love all our children equally.
Right. Michele, do you have any favorite stories that maybe we haven't, or films that we should be looking for that we might not know about yet?
Yeah, well, so one of our programs, it's a little bit of a wild one, but it's with our partnership with AT&T, which is the main sponsor of the festival, and they came to us about 4 years ago, really asking like how can they make a big splash in supporting filmmakers and support filmmakers in a meaningful way. And Jane, who runs our festival, essentially said like the answer to that is money. There's so many stories, untold stories out there that all that they're missing is really the financial support to make it happen. So we created this program called AT&T Untold Stories, where we fully fund one project each year for $1 million. And within that, they're guaranteed a festival premiere the following year at Tribeca. So, I mean, with our other funding, a lot of it is, 10K, 75K, 50K, something like that. $1 million is very different. It's not a grant. It's a program. So it goes to the film completely. Where the 10K, like we kind of just like give it to you unallocated funds. You can put it anywhere. And with AT&T, there's a lot of stipulations in that it has to be completed within the year. So because of that, we do have all these projects that have been completed and have had a nice festival run. One that's in London right now actually is called Lucky Grandma, and it won in 2017, premiered this last year. And it's about an elderly Chinese woman living in Chinatown who she gets in trouble with the Chinese mafia because she finds like a large sum of money, and the film follows her kind of like running through Chinatown, trying to hold on to the money. And it's a great project, and the filmmaker that made it, she had the script for I think something like 10 years, and it was really hard to market because the lead character is an elderly Asian woman, and the film is entirely in Cantonese. So it was something that like whenever she pitched, it just like didn't quite land or couldn't quite get the funding. And AT&T is such a special program in that way, and that like so many times we get projects like that are people's dream projects that they've been working on, and for whatever reason they just haven't been able to gain the funding to really make it happen. So yeah, that's I premiered at Tribeca back in April, and it's playing at BFI London. I think it played there last night. Yeah.
Incredible. Well, it was so lovely chatting with you.
Thanks.
And like was said before, they're here hopefully for a few more minutes. If you would like to connect with them after and hear a little bit more about how maybe to apply. What's your website really quickly, because we're out of time?
Yeah, it's tfiny.org. Really quickly, I just want to plug, there's one other program called the TFI Sloan Filmmaker Fund. It's open for projects, scripted projects dealing in math, science, and tech, and that's also open for submissions. So TAA, ATT Untold Stories, and TFI Sloan Filmmaker Fund are the three that are open till November 5th. So I couldn't leave without plugging that.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks.